is our story. It is Friday, February 24th, 2017. It's a beautiful and crisp February day. From the outside of the car, everything looks perfect. But from inside the car, all we can feel is the tension and worry. We dropped Luke off at his aunt's house a few moments ago, and Ryan, who is only 4 years old, is sitting in the back seat, tired and pale. We turn onto the Stony Brook Hospital campus, and as we approach the first sign, Jim and I start crying. We enter the building and walk down a very long hallway to the beautifully etched glass doors that read Pediatric Hematology Oncology. And as we sit down, I see a little boy with tubes coming out of every direction and a bag of meds hanging on the pole that he's dragging behind him. And I think to myself, am I really here? And then the nurse yells out, "Ryan Starace." Jim gently places Ryan, upon the exam table, and I notice a little bald girl in a painting on the wall. Once again, I think to myself, how can they do that? She's bald. But I quickly realized where I was. There is a knock at the door, and Dr. Parker walks into the room. He seems happy, not sad how I imagined a cancer doctor to look. He's a tall, thin, gray-haired man. "Hello, I'm Dr. Parker," he says. "This must be Ryan." He looks at his paperwork, turns to Jim and I, and says, "Ryan might have leukemia or lymphoma." My whole world turns black. I can't hear, see, or think. We drive back to Jim's sister Denise's house to pick up Luke, and as I walk into the house, I collapse into her arms and say, they think Ryan has cancer. The very next morning, I'm rushing Ryan to the emergency room because he's been up all night in pain. He's rushed into a tiny emergency room with nurses who are poking every vein they can find. The only thing going through my head was, is Ryan going to die? Ryan is then immediately admitted to 11 South, the pediatric oncology floor. 3 long days later, Dr. Parker confirms the news we did not want to hear. Ryan has pre-B-cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I collapsed as the words graced his lips and turned into a puddle on the floor. And just 3 days later, Ryan began chemo. After living at the hospital for 2 weeks, we go home as we try to stay strong and adjust to our new normal. But Ryan soon becomes lethargic and stops eating, drinking, and urinating. We rush him back to the clinic on the Stony Brook campus. They run blood, do an EKG, and within minutes, Dr. Meyer turns to me and says, "Ryan's kidneys are failing, and he's on the verge of cardiac arrest." Before I could blink, Ryan was on a stretcher being swept away into an ambulance to drive across the parking lot to the hospital. Doctors, nurses, surgeons, nephrologists, and God knows who else rush into the pediatric ICU like a scene from a movie. And as I look up, I see Jim standing in the doorway, sobbing, with tears rushing down his face. But we can't get to each other. Within minutes, Ryan is sedated and on dialysis. And for a moment, things seem under control until the machines start beeping and everyone jumps into action once again. The line is clotting and Ryan's catheter is being ripped out of his leg with blood squirting everywhere as a new line is being inserted without anesthesia. All I feel is pure terror. Ryan could die right now. Cancer and now kidney disease. I just prayed and asked God to save our baby boy. Then in a brief moment of light, after 4 weeks of horror, God answered our prayer. Ryan's kidneys started making urine again, and we got to go home. Amazingly, 28 days after the start of chemo, Ryan is in remission, but his road to recovery is far from over. The next 3.5 years, Ryan will undergo chemo infusions, monthly spinal taps, weekly doctor visits, and at-home chemo treatments. 1 year later, Ryan is doing awesome, but the trauma has given me anxiety that is so overwhelming, I can't get out of bed some days. It's been so hard to find time to focus on me with the fear that I have lived over the last year. Thanks to my husband, Jim, he gives me the confidence to do so. Jim is my safe place, and with each word of encouragement from him and others, I start to realize how loved I am. And on January 3rd, 2018, Ryan is going back to school. He has missed more than a year, but Ryan is now getting his life back. I have such a sense of pride, but now I'm worried about him. I think, what if he needs me? Or what if someone coughs or sneezes? What if he forgets to wash his hands? But then I see Ryan playing with his friends, with smiles from ear to ear, and all my tensions fall away. But our biggest milestone came on May 9th, 2020, 1,171 days after Ryan's first day of chemo. Ryan is now taking his last dose of chemotherapy. His brain will be clear and focused. And after 3.5 years of doctor appointments, chemo visits, spinal taps, and the emergency trips to the hospital, there'll be no more poison running through his veins. Ryan is healthy again. Later that day, as Steve said, we were surprised by a parade of over 200 cars filled with our friends, family, and strangers who came to celebrate Ryan's special day. What this day represents for me is pure love. Before all this began, I thought my life was about a lot of different things. And because of that, it was hard to allow people in and accept others' help. But now I realize life is about you, all the people. Like when Ryan's preschool teacher from years ago still calls every week to check in on him. And when my sister and sister-in-law stepped up those first few weeks to make sure Luke was at school with his lunch and homework done. And when each and every one of you take the time to make a difference in Ryan's life and other people's lives fighting blood cancer. And what I've gotten from all of this is to let the love in. I've experienced love in a way that I never knew was possible. And allowing that love in has allowed me to give it back tenfold. And it started with a phone call to LLS about the Light the Night walk in 2017. A phone call where I met Bridget Mantello, our campaign manager, who has now become one of my dear friends. Light the Night is such a special event for Ryan and our family. It was the first event our family participated in after Ryan's diagnosis, and it was the first time we got to see firsthand how simply a lemonade stand and sending letters to my Christmas card list could raise $7,000. We were truly blown away. Light the Night has become our yearly tradition with family and friends, and it's a night we look forward to every year. This year will be a little different, but nevertheless, we're going to still celebrate. And we're going to light the night for Ryan like we do every year. Thank you for being a part of this amazing event, and thank you for being a part of my story.